Okay, so this week what I want to talk about is never mind the label. It's basically remembering a brilliant man called Fil Came, who I worked with a lot when he was at Learning Works. He passed away a couple of years ago, and he taught me a lot, and we were working on a book together called Never Mind the Label. And the helpful hints which I put on my website each week, they were going to go in this particular book, and after he passed I decided to put them up on my website each week. So why a label? How is it useful to have a label? So there are a few things that are really useful about having a label for an area of SEND. For example, it can give understanding. It can help you to have an idea of the sorts of things you could be looking out for, but those require that the teacher, the parent, and have had training so they know what to look out for. Okay, it's all very well saying, oh, they're dyslexic, but that if that just brings up, oh, they can't read and write, that's not enough. The label is then not helping. So for the label to be helpful, there's got to be the understanding behind that label, not just a label in and of itself. It also can improve self-esteem. I know that knowing for sure that I'm dyslexic has helped me to understand a lot of my difficulties and stop calling myself stupid all the time. It doesn't take that away totally, because I was so old by the time I got diagnosed as, assessed for my dyslexia. But if you know that from a young enough age, it can be quite empowering. So there are positive things about a label. It can help us to know the sorts of strategies that might be useful to employ. But again, that requires that training to have been in place so that we know exactly what we're talking about. But the important thing is, we are more than our label. Okay? Anybody with a label of anything, but especially with special educational needs, doesn't mean that they fit neatly into some sort of little box. Oh, they're dyslexic, so they're this. They're autistic, so they're this. Oh, because you're autistic, how come you've managed to look at me in the eyes while we're talking? You're autistic. Autistic people can't do that. Maybe you're not autistic. That sort of thing is not helpful. So a label loses its power if it is about putting somebody in a box and assuming everybody with that label is the same. So you have to remember, we have to remember, that just because somebody has a label does not define them. They are themselves an individual, and it is that individual who we need to learn to understand in order to better support them. So, for example, you can miss people's areas of need. So if you see somebody as being, oh, they are this, therefore they are going to behave like this, and therefore their needs are going to be that, you're just not looking at the whole picture. You're seeing a small part of a picture and missing out on so much that we're not going to be able to in that way support the child. Okay, so I'm going to give the examples of dyslexia. Okay, a couple of reasons. One, I'm dyslexic, so and I'm successful. I've got my doctorate, I lead services, I read a lot. So you might not know that I'm dyslexic because you've looked at the label. So it seemed a good one, but also because it's me, I know a lot about it. But also, I've had people this week specifically talking to me about dyslexia, so I felt it was a good area to discuss. So, like I said, the common picture of you're dyslexic, what are you, is, oh, you can't read, you can't write, and you can't spell. Well, yeah, I have difficulties with reading, writing and spelling. I do have difficulties with all those areas. And dyslexia means difficulty with the written word. So obviously there is going to be an element of that. But in my case, I happen to have a higher intellect than I ever gave myself credit for. 99.8 percentile for various aspects of intelligence. And yet I've got things that are about my reading and my ways of coping with the written word that are right down there between the 1st and the 5th percentile. So the two extremes found in less than 0.1% of the population. It's extreme. But because it's extreme, this is where people can easily get missed. a lot of the time people with dyslexia are in bottom sets for everything, and therefore they're just not being challenged. Now, I was in the top set. I was in the top set right throughout my schooling, but because I struggled, I thought I was stupid. And I didn't mix with anyone in any other sets, therefore I was only ever comparing myself with people in the same set, and they seemed to do things quickly. For me, I hid it. I used to do homework till gone midnight. You know, my parents would come in and they'd turn the light out, it's too late to be up working, and I'd wait till they'd gone to bed and I'd turn the light on and carry on, because I wanted to disappear. I didn't want to stand out, so I would just slip into the background, and I would always do my homework on time, and sometimes get told it was a bit rushed. It was never a bit rushed. If anything, I'd spent probably 4 or 5 times longer on it than most people, but that was my norm. So I have taken as a career path, I'm an English teacher because of a wonderful teacher I had when I was in the 3rd year secondary, which is now called year 9, and she made me believe in myself and she made me enjoy English. But I am an English teacher and I've focused on special educational needs, so I know the spelling rules, I understand it intellectually, but in terms of just looking at something, I don't know if it's right or wrong. You know, I mean, there are words I still just don't spell because I struggle with them, and I can't, all the different things I've given myself to try and help learn them just disappear, struggle with them. I read things beautifully. However, I don't know what I'm reading about. I may sound like I do, but unless I've read it 4 or 5 times before I read it out loud, I haven't got a clue. I know intellectually I understand the structures of it, and therefore can make it sound like I know what I'm talking about. But it's not only that I can't work it out as I'm going along because I'm too busy decoding, but also I've forgotten because my working memory is shot. Now, that's a big part of dyslexia. Now, it's not just dyslexia. The thing is, with a lot of these areas of need, they coexist with other areas of need. So there might be a bit of dyspraxia, a bit of dyscalculia, dysgraphia. There could be a bit of sort of very mild Asperger's, you know, AS, or possibly a tiny bit of ADHD. I mean, for example, I'll just grab this. That's a bit of, it's a Unifix thing. I often fidget with things like that. I've just been given, sorry for the background noise, this, you can't even see it 'cause it's clear, but this sort of, it's actually a gaming dice. I don't do the gaming stuff. It's for Dungeons and Dragons or something, but I love the feel of it, and I need to be on the move. I do knitting while I'm watching television, because just watching television doesn't keep me still inside, whereas if I'm knitting, it calms me, it centres me. But I'm not ADHD. But there are little traces of these things, so these things often coexist. But if you're just looking, oh, reading, writing, you've missed the working memory, but you've also missed the executive functioning and the getting things in the right order. And that's all part of the working memory. So I might just start doing something, be distracted by something, and go off and do something totally different, and then forget the thing I was doing, and then it's all done in the wrong order, and it just goes a bit, whoa, crazy. That sort of thing happens to a lot of people who are dyslexic, as well as other areas of need. Other labels would have some of these other characteristics. Word retrieval. I quite often just forget what I'm trying to say. Now, you know, you could say I'm getting older, it's my age, but it's never been any different. You know, I just forget the words for things, and I call things thingamajigs and whatnots and so on. This is not uncommon for dyslexics, but it's not on the, oh, they're dyslexic, they can't read, write and spell. It's not part of that label, so you have to look deeper, and it's not the same for every single dyslexic. Different people have different areas of need. Another part of it is the orientation. So I do sometimes get my B's and D's muddled up still. The letter J, I have to write my son's name Joe to know whether I've done the J in the right direction, because looking at a J in isolation. If I'm doing the wooden letters with the children, I wouldn't know which way round it should be. I get confused with the J, I get confused with the N, the S, find that confusing, and numbers, 3s, 5s, they're not always the right way round, 7s. So this is an orientation thing, but it's also the order of letters in words. So I could write and, NDA or NAD or whatever. I don't necessarily put those 3 letters in the right order. So that's another indication of dyslexia, that just getting things in the wrong order. So this comorbidity is really important to understand, because if you just look at that basic label, you're going to miss so much, and you're not going to see the individual needs of that child. What does that child need to help that child learn? And that will depend on the specific child. What are their areas of need? Not what's the label that they've got. They may have a primary and a secondary area of need, for example. They may have dyslexia but also have autism. Which is the one that is most in need of addressing? It could be that the autism is mild and generally in the classroom that's not an issue, but the dyslexia is affecting access to the curriculum. Or it could be that the various aspects of their autism are making it harder for them to engage at all with the curriculum, and therefore that needs to be addressed first. Which is the primary area of need? And then which aspects of the autism, what aspects of any other area of need? Whatever the label is not enough. We are not defined by our labels. We are more than our labels. We are a whole host of things, and some of these things are amazing. You know, there's creativity that quite often goes alongside dyslexia. A lot of the strategies I've developed over the years for supporting dyslexia come from the fact that I don't think in a linear way. I think all over the place. I've shared stuff about that before, where our brains don't just go, oh, I'm starting here, I've got to end there, let's go there. Our brains go, okay, I'm starting here, I've got to end there. Well, if, and if I bring that, and then sometimes we can bring all of that together ourselves and still end up at the right place. Other times we draw on people around us, and we'll throw out all those things that are hovering around our heads and everywhere, and say, somebody else will help us to pull them together. I was very fortunate in my last job, where I had a deputy head at the school who just got it, and very patiently would sit there and go work his way through my sweet jar, while I would just throw these ideas out and say, I've got this, and I need to do this, this and this, and in the end, in 2 sentences, he'd say, oh, so what you mean is this, and you could do it by doing that. I'm like, yes, that's it, you've got it. So that's my type of dyslexia. It's not necessarily somebody else's dyslexia. So yes, we need the labels. Yes, the labels help us, but only if we look beyond the label and see the child who lies beneath. Thank you.